The world felt like it was slipping through my fingers, a watercolor painting dissolving in the rain. I stood in our small main apartment, staring at the man who claimed to love me, his blue eyes trembling with a pain I couldn't understand. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I don't remember why my heart feels like it's breaking. 3 years ago, a car accident stole my memories, leaving my past a blank slate. Doctors called it retrograde amnesia, a cruel thief that erased everything before the crash. My childhood, my dreams, and apparently, the love of my life. That love was Caleb Monroe, the man standing before me now, his hands clenched as if holding on to something I couldn't see. He'd been there when I woke up in the hospital, a stranger with a soft voice and a smile that felt like home. He told me we'd been together for 2 years, that we'd built a life in this coastal town of Bar Harbor. I believed him, but I didn't feel it. How do you love someone when your heart is a locked door with no key? For 3 years, Caleb tried to rebuild what we'd lost. He showed me photos of us hiking Acadia National Park, laughing at lobster festivals, kissing under the 4th of July fireworks. He cooked my favorite meals, chicken Alfredo, blueberry pie, hoping a taste would spark something. But every touch, every story, felt like a script I was supposed to memorize. I wanted to love him. God, I tried. But the emptiness in my chest grew heavier, a silent scream that I didn't belong here. Tonight, I'd had enough. Caleb, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my throat. I can't keep pretending. I think I need to leave. His face crumpled like a paper house in a storm. He sank to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks, and whispered, "Please, Ethan, don't do this. You don't remember, but I do. I met Caleb, or rather, re-met him, when I woke up in the hospital, my head wrapped in bandages and my mind a fog. He was sitting by my bed, his sandy blonde hair disheveled, his flannel shirt wrinkled from sleepless nights. Ethan, he'd said, his voice cracking, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't know him, but his presence was a lifeline in the chaos. Over the next few weeks, he told me our story. We'd met at a local bookstore, bonded over dog-eared copies of Vonnegut, and fallen in love over late-night talks and seaside walks. He was a painter, I was a photographer, and together we dreamed of opening a gallery. It sounded beautiful, but felt like someone else's life. Adjusting to life with amnesia was like walking through a house with no lights. I learned to navigate by touch, routines, habits, Caleb's patient guidance. He moved us into a small apartment overlooking the Atlantic, thinking the ocean's rhythm might jog my memory. He was kind, endlessly kind, but kindness wasn't enough. I felt like a guest in my own life, mimicking emotions I didn't feel. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering who I was before the accident. Did I laugh louder? Did I love harder? Did I look at Caleb the way he looked at me, like I was the only thing keeping him anchored? The town of Bar Harbor embraced us, but I could sense the whispers. Poor Caleb, they'd say, stuck with a boyfriend who doesn't remember him. I hated their pity, hated the weight of their expectations. I started avoiding the diner where we used to share fries, the pier where we'd watch sunsets. Everywhere I went, I saw pieces of a life I couldn't claim. Caleb never pushed, but I saw the hope in his eyes fade a little more each day. He painted less, smiled less. I was breaking him, and I didn't know how to stop. One evening, I found a journal in the attic, tucked inside a box of old photos. It was mine, filled with entries from before the accident. The words were raw, vivid. Caleb's laugh is like sunlight on water. I could listen to it forever. I read about our first kiss, how my heart raced when his fingers brushed mine. I read about fights, too. Petty ones over dishes, deeper ones about fears of losing each other. The journal was a window to a love I couldn't feel, and it made me angry. Why couldn't I remember? Why couldn't I be the Ethan he loved? That night, as Caleb knelt before me, his sobs echoed in the quiet apartment. You don't understand, he said, his voice raw. You're everything to me. If you leave, I don't know how to keep going. His words hit like a punch, stirring something deep inside, a flicker of guilt, or maybe something more. I wanted to comfort him, but my hand stayed frozen at my sides. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I don't know how to be the person you want." He looked up, eyes red and desperate. "You're still him, Ethan. You're still the man who made me believe in love. You just don't see it yet." He stood, wiping his face, and grabbed his coat. "I need some air. Please, just think about this." The door closed softly behind him, leaving me alone with the weight of his words. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. The journal lay on the coffee table, its pages taunting me. I opened it again, hoping for answers. One entry caught my eye, dated a month before the accident. "Caleb's scared I'll leave one day." He doesn't say it, but I see it in his eyes. I need to show him I'm here for good. The words felt like a promise I'd broken, a vow I didn't remember making. I slammed the journal shut, my chest tight. Was I giving up too easily, or was I holding on to a ghost? Outside, the wind howled, carrying the scent of salt and pine. I thought of Caleb, walking the dark streets alone, and something in me shifted. I didn't love him, not yet, but I couldn't bear the thought of him hurting. Maybe that was enough to stay for now. Maybe love wasn't just a feeling, but a choice. The next morning, the apartment was too quiet. Caleb hadn't come home. I stood by the window, watching the fog roll over the harbor, my stomach twisting with guilt. His absence felt like a hole in the world, and I hated how much it scared me. I didn't love him, not the way he wanted, but the thought of him gone made my chest ache in a way I couldn't explain. I pulled on a jacket and headed out to find him. Bar Harbor was waking up, fishermen hauling nets, tourists snapping photos of the lighthouse. I checked the pier first, where Caleb sometimes painted at dawn. The easel stood empty, the canvas blank. I tried the bookstore, the coffee shop, even the rocky beach where he'd once told me we carved our initials into a driftwood log. Nothing. Panic crept in, sharp and cold. What if he'd left for good? What if my words last night had pushed him too far? I ended up at Acadia National Park, the place Caleb said we'd spend our best days. The trails were familiar, though I couldn't tell if it was memory or just Caleb's stories etched into my mind. I climbed a path toward Jordan Pond, the air crisp with pine and earth. That's when I saw him, sitting on a boulder, staring at the water. His shoulders were slumped, his hands clasped tightly, like he was holding himself together. "Caleb," I called softly. He turned, his face pale, eyes hollow. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I thought you'd be gone by now." "I couldn't," I admitted, sitting beside him. "Not after last night." The words felt clumsy, inadequate. "I don't know what I'm doing, Caleb. I don't know how to fix this." He laughed, a bitter sound. "You think I do? I've spent 3 years trying to bring you back, Ethan. Every day, I wake up hoping you'll look at me like you used to. And every day you don't." He rubbed his eyes, exhausted. "Maybe you're right. Maybe you should leave." His words stung, but they also lit a spark of defiance in me. "Don't say that," I snapped. "You don't get to give up on me now." I didn't know where the anger came from, but it felt like mine, not some echo of a forgotten past. Caleb's eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through the pain. We sat in silence, the pond reflecting the morning sky. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer. "There's a place I want to show you. It's where we went after our first big fight. It meant something to us." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Maybe a place could hold the answers my mind couldn't. Caleb led me to a hidden cove, a small stretch of beach tucked between cliffs. The waves were gentle here, lapping at the shore like a whispered secret. He pointed to a flat rock where we'd etched our names. Ethan plus Caleb, forever. The carving was weathered but clear, a testament to a promise I didn't remember making. "This is where you told me you wanted a future with me," Caleb said. "You said no matter what happened, we'd find a way." I traced the letters with my finger, willing myself to feel something. A faint warmth stirred, like a half-remembered dream, but slipped away. "I want to feel it," I said, my voice breaking. "I want to be that guy again." Caleb's hand found mine, tentative. "You are him. You're stubborn, kind, a little too serious sometimes. You just don't see it." His touch was warm, grounding, and for the first time I didn't pull away. We spent the day at the cove, talking, not about the past, but about now. He told me about his latest painting, a stormy seascape he couldn't finish. I admitted I'd been taking photos again, capturing the town's quiet moments. It felt normal, like we were two people starting over, not trying to rebuild something broken. That night, back at the apartment, Caleb cooked dinner, spaghetti with homemade sauce, the kind he said I used to love. We ate on the floor, the TV playing some old rom-com neither of us watched. For the first time, I laughed without forcing it, and Caleb's smile lit up the room. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something close. A spark, a possibility. But the peace didn't last. A week later, I found a letter tucked inside the journal, one I hadn't noticed before. It was for me, written days before the accident. Caleb, I'm scared. I love you, but sometimes I feel like I'm not enough. If I ever lose you, I don't know how I'll survive. The words hit like a tidal wave, raw and real. I've been afraid of losing him, even then. But there was more, a line about a fight, something about trust, something I'd done wrong. The letter didn't explain, and it left me reeling. I confronted Caleb that night, holding the letter like evidence. What happened before the accident? What were we fighting about? His face paled, and he looked away. It doesn't matter now, he said, but his voice was tight. It matters to me, I pressed. If I'm going to stay, I need the truth. Caleb's silence was deafening, and for the first time, I wondered if the past I couldn't remember was hiding something darker than love. Caleb's silence hung between us like a storm cloud, heavy and charged. I stood in our living room, the letter trembling in my hand, its words burning in my mind. Whatever we'd fought about before the accident wasn't just a lover's quarrel. It was something big enough to make me question everything. Tell me, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. What did I do? Why were we fighting? Caleb's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the window, as if he could escape through it. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 100 times when he was nervous. It was nothing, he said finally, but the lie was obvious. Just a rough patch. Every couple has them. Don't bullshit me, Caleb. I stepped closer, the letter crumpling in my fist. This says I was scared of losing you, that I wasn't enough. What happened? My voice cracked, betraying the fear clawing in my chest. What if the Ethan I'd been wasn't someone worth loving? Caleb sighed, sinking onto the couch. You don't need to know this, Ethan. It won't help. Then why does it feel like it's the only thing that matters? I shot back. He looked at me, his blue eyes raw with something I couldn't name. Guilt, maybe, or regret. After a long pause, he spoke. You thought I was hiding something, he said quietly. You found texts on my phone from someone I used to know. An ex. We've been talking. Not anything serious, just catching up, but you didn't see it that way. You thought I was pulling away. My stomach twisted. Were you? No. His voice was fierce, almost desperate. I loved you, Ethan. I still do. But you were so intense back then. You needed me to be everything, and I didn't know how to handle it. We fought. You stormed out. And then he stopped, his breath hitching. The accident happened that night. The air left my lungs. The accident. The night my world went dark. You're saying it was my fault? I whispered. No, Caleb said quickly, standing to face me. God, no. It was a drunk driver, Ethan. You couldn't have known. But I've carried that fight with me every day since. I thought if I told you, you'd hate me. I didn't know what to feel, anger, betrayal, or just the familiar ache of not knowing. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. You let me think everything was perfect before. Because I was scared, he admitted. Scared you'd leave if you knew we weren't perfect. I thought I could make you love me again, make it right. His words hit hard, stirring that same flicker of something I'd felt at the cove. Not love, not yet, but a pull to stay, to understand. I sat beside him, the letter falling to the floor. I don't hate you, I said softly, but I need time. Over the next few weeks, we tiptoed around each other, rebuilding trust one small step at a time. Caleb opened up more, sharing stories of our past without the rose-tinted filter. He told me about my stubborn streak, how I'd argue over the best way to stack firewood. He showed me a painting he'd done of me, my face lit by campfire glow, eyes full of a love I couldn't remember. Slowly, I started to see the man I'd been. Not perfect, but real. I threw myself into photography again, capturing the rugged beauty of Maine. The click of the shutter felt like a tether to who I was or who I could be. Caleb joined me sometimes, sketching beside me as I framed shots of the coastline. We didn't talk about love, but we laughed more, argued less. It was a fragile piece, but it was ours. Then came the festival. Bar Harbor's annual Lobster Fest was in full swing, the town alive with music and lights. Caleb insisted we go, saying it was where we'd had our first date. I agreed, hoping the crowd might drown out the questions still swirling in my mind. The air smelled of salt and butter, and strings of fairy lights twinkled above the pier. Caleb's hand brushed mine as we walked. I didn't pull away. We stopped at a booth selling handmade jewelry, and Caleb picked up a leather bracelet, simple but sturdy. "You used to wear one like this," he said, his voice soft. "I gave it to you after our first year together." He hesitated, then slipped it onto my wrist. The weight felt right, like it belonged. For a moment, I saw us as we'd been, two kids in love, dancing under the stars, unafraid of the world's judgment. But the world hadn't always been kind. As we left the booth, a group of guys nearby muttered something under their breath, their eyes hard. I caught the word fags, sharp and venomous. Caleb's hand tightened around mine, but he kept walking head high. I wanted to turn back, to confront them, but his grip anchored me. "They're not worth it," he murmured. "We've been through worse." That night, I lay awake, the bracelet still on my wrist. I thought about the fight, the accident, the years Caleb had spent holding on to a love I couldn't feel. I thought about the hate we'd faced, the kind that made you question if love was worth the cost. And yet, Caleb had stayed. Through the pain, the doubt, the emptiness, he'd stayed. The bracelet became my anchor. I wore it every day, its leather softening against my skin, a reminder of Caleb's quiet strength. But the questions lingered, gnawing at me. Could I love him again? Could I build a future on a foundation I couldn't remember? The answers felt just out of reach, like stars hidden by city lights. Fall settled over Bar Harbor, painting the trees in fiery reds and golds. Caleb and I fell into a rhythm. Mornings spent hiking, evenings sharing takeout and stories. He told me about his childhood, growing up in a small town where being openly gay meant whispers and sidelong glances. I shared what little I knew of myself, my love for black coffee, the way the ocean calmed my restless mind. We were learning each other anew, but the past still cast a long shadow. One afternoon, I found an old camera in the closet, a Nikon I'd used before the accident. The memory card held photos I didn't remember taking. Caleb laughing on a ferry, his hair whipped by the wind. The two of us at a bonfire, my arm around his waist. A selfie of us kissing, the sunset blazing behind us. Each image was a piece of a puzzle I couldn't solve, but they stirred something, grief for a life I'd lost, hope for one I might reclaim. I showed the photos to Caleb that evening, hoping they'd spark a conversation. Instead, he grew quiet, his fingers tracing the edges of the prints. "This was our last trip before the accident," he said finally. "We went to Mount Desert Island. You said it was the happiest you'd ever been." His voice broke, and he looked away. "I keep wondering if I'd done something differently, if I'd stopped that fight. Maybe you wouldn't have been on that road." "Caleb, stop," I said, my hand on his arm. "You didn't cause the accident. You can't carry that." But his words echoed my own fears. What if the past held mistakes we couldn't undo? I pushed the photos aside and pulled him close, my arms around him. It wasn't love, not exactly, but it was need. A need to keep him from slipping away. The turning point came in October, during a storm that battered the coast. Rain lashed the windows, and the power flickered out, leaving us in darkness. Caleb lit candles, their glow casting shadows on the walls. We sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the world outside roaring with wind and waves. It felt like we were the only two people left, cocooned in a fragile moment. "Tell me something you've never told me," I said, my voice soft. Caleb hesitated, then smiled faintly. When we first met, I was terrified, he admitted. You were so confident, so sure of yourself. I thought you'd never look at someone like me, some small-town guy with paint on his hands. But you did. You saw me. His eyes met mine, steady and warm. Even now, with everything gone, you're still seeing me. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him I loved him, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I leaned in and kissed him, slow and tentative. His lips were warm, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. It wasn't a memory, but it was real. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wet, but he was smiling. The storm raged on, but inside something shifted. We started planning again, not for the past, but for a future we could build. We talked about opening that gallery we dreamed of, showcasing my photos and his paintings. We laughed about names, sunset frames, tied in canvas, each one sillier than the last. For the first time, I felt like I was part of something, not just a shadow of someone else's life. But the world outside our apartment wasn't as forgiving. At a town meeting about the festival, a council member made a snide comment about keeping things family-friendly, his eyes flickering toward us. The room went quiet, and I felt Caleb tense beside me. I stood, my voice steady. Love is family, I said, and we're not going anywhere. The words surprised even me, but they felt true. Caleb's hand found mine under the table, and I squeezed it tight. That night, I dreamed of the accident for the first time. Not the crash itself, but the moments before, driving down a dark road, my hands gripping the wheel, my heart heavy with anger. I woke up gasping, Caleb's arms around me. It's okay, he whispered. You're here. And for the first time, I believed I was. Winter came to Bar Harbor, blanketing the town in snow. Caleb and I were different now, stronger, like a house rebuilt after a fire. We weren't the same couple from the photos, but we were something new, something we'd chosen together. The gallery idea became real, a small space on Main Street where we hung my black and white ocean shots next to Caleb's vibrant seascapes. Opening night was a blur of nerves and laughter, friends and strangers filling the room, their voices warm with support. Caleb's hand stayed in mine, a quiet promise that we'd made it through. But the past wasn't done with us. One morning, I found a box in the attic labeled Ethan stuff. Inside were letters, ticket stubs, a worn copy of Slaughterhouse-Five, pieces of me I'd forgotten. At the bottom was a note in my handwriting. If you're reading this, Ethan, you're lost. Find Caleb. He's your home. My breath caught. I'd written it days before the accident, as if I knew I might forget him. I showed it to Caleb, my hands shaking. He read it silently, tears pooling in his eyes. You always knew, he whispered. Even then, you knew what we had. He pulled me into his arms, and this time, I didn't hold back. I kissed him, fierce and certain, feeling the weight of 3 years lift. It wasn't a memory. It was love, new and raw, born from everything we'd fought for. Months later, we stood on the cliffside where we'd carved our names years ago. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Caleb's hand was warm in mine, his smile brighter than the horizon. I thought I'd lost you, he said, his voice soft. Not just to the accident, but to the emptiness after. You didn't, I said, my thumb brushing over the bracelet he'd given me. You brought me back. I didn't remember the old Ethan, not fully, but I didn't need to. The man I was now loved Caleb, not because of the past, but because of every moment we'd built since. We faced challenges, whispers from narrow-minded townsfolk, the occasional cruel comment. But we faced them together, our love a shield against the world. The gallery thrived, a testament to our resilience, a space where others like us could feel seen. We weren't just surviving. We were living fully and unapologetically. As the sun dipped below the ocean, Caleb turned to me, his eyes bright. Forever, he asked, echoing the carving on the rock. Forever, I said, and meant it. The journey hadn't been easy. Amnesia had stolen my past, but it couldn't take my future. Caleb's love, his stubborn, unwavering belief in us, had shown me that love isn't just a memory. It's a choice, a fight, a promise kept. And as we stood there, hand in hand, I knew I'd keep choosing him every single day.